I don't know if that's too general or.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Of course, it depends.
Depends on the head. Yeah.
And a lot of things. But generally speaking, let me get this out of the way first. There's a difference between a size ratio and an area ratio. So a lot of people will think, I need 75% of the intake, which is normal. So let's say a normally aspirated engine will be unlimited NA, will be about 68% of the intake to 70% from size. And this is not a flow ratio, it is a size ratio. That's what I meant to say. People think it's a flow ratio. The exhaust should not flow 70% of the end. It doesn't have to, let's put it that way. It can, and that could be just fine, but it's flow ratios on the exhaust are a waste of time. They don't work like that. But the size itself, the area exposed to the combustion chamber, for an NA engine, unlimited 68 to 70, an normally aspirated street engine 75, and supercharged stuff would probably be about 78, 80%. If you can get it in there, if you can fit it. So the nitrous stuff, it has, I mean, you're burning 4 times the amount of fuel, so you have a lot to get out. So we try to shrink the intake down and grow the exhaust as much as possible, but now we're in that area where we're fighting the fact where we're 160, 180 CFM under valve. So we need that intake area, but it's a nitrous engine, so the fuel density is high, so we don't need as much as we would if it was normally aspirated. So then we kind of mess with that and move that around and then mess with the exhaust size. And what we found is the exhaust size, intake to exhaust ratio, is much, much more critical on a supercharged or nitrous engine than an NA engine. And I will say this, you can cam a piss poor exhaust port to a point. If the port doesn't really flow that well, if it's too small, you can open it a little earlier, you can hang it open a little longer, and it's not really going to affect you. It's going to help. But you cannot cam a bad intake port. It won't work. Okay. Because the intake port is relying on nature's 14.7 PSI. That's all the energy there is in the system. But on the exhaust side, that's where all the energy is. You have all the heat, all the pressure you could possibly want. You have to get rid of it. So use it. Use that energy.
There it is. Science is validating constantly everything we do. Here's one that kind of goes back to this we were just talking about. Stock heads, aftermarket heads, I don't know. Characteristic.
Okay. Why do they have a longer duration and lift on the exhaust side? I don't think that's just the longer duration part is pretty much the norm for all engines. And the lift on the exhaust, I don't know what cam you're talking about, and I don't know the actual specific purpose that you're using this engine for. So the generalization here is that they're all that way. So they're not all that way, but the majority of all NA engines and supercharged engines, all auto cycle engines have a longer duration on the exhaust. And in unlimited engines, we actually try to slow the ramps down. You don't want to treat the exhaust side like the intake side. It has to be smooth. Like that Cadillac for Justin Shear, that does have marine lobes on the exhaust.
Wow.
So a marine lobe is a super smooth opening, smooth closing lobe. And the reason we do that is you're opening up against pressure. And when you supercharge it, you increase that pressure, and then with nitrous, you really increase that pressure. It's like a top fueler takes almost 20,000 pounds just to open the valve.
Wow.
It takes 4,500 pounds to open the valve on a Pro Mod. So, I mean, the residual pressure in there is extremely high. So it's the pressure versus the surface area of that valve. you can calculate it out. You can look at the in-cylinder pressure analysis and find out. So if you have a fast ramp rate, all you're going to do is, instead of opening the valve, what you're going to do is the push rod's just going to bend and store energy and snap it. So you don't want that to happen. You want a nice, smooth, gradual opening. And we also learned, even if the push rods were stiff enough to handle the load, it didn't like it. The blowdown phase, and you can Google blowdown phase. The blowdown phase is unbelievably important part. There are 4 cycles. There are 5 phases in the engine.
Okay.
So, intake, exhaust, compression, exhaust. Yeah. Well, you also have inlet, and then during the overlap, you have you have blowdown, you have, there are multiple things happening. In overlap, there's a lot of stuff happening. Now I'm gotten off track. I'm getting old.
The bottom line was, I think what he was asking about stock Pontiac heads is the fact that their exhaust ports aren't flowing as good.
Yeah.
They crutch it with more duration and lift.
That's also why you see higher rocker arm ratios on the intake side and less on the exhaust too. Because for each ratio you go up in rocker, you can increase the velocity 10, 15%. That's too big of a hit. And 2, the loading on the exhaust side is so high, you just want to get it as smooth as you can. If you blow the cylinder down too fast, it's not as good as if it's a slow, gradual, smooth, controlled acceleration.
There's another one that you have to read it and see, but I think you can give a good answer on it.
Well, it depends on how bad the mismatch is. Now, the roof is the worst place to have a mismatch. If the cylinder head is presenting itself to the airflow, and that airflow is having to hit that
and go underneath.
Yeah. So what that does is, if that sees 50, the air is shut off about a ½ inch, because what happens is the airflow hits it and then comes down and shoves the air down. So you're actually shrinking the port quite a bit with mismatch like that. If it was on the floor, you probably never notice it. But on the roof, if it's 50 or more, you need to get it port matched.
Here's one that's way off topic, but you did it.